Yes, YouTube, how are we doing? So today is going to be all about how to actually create purposeful content, as we can basically see at the top. So this is one of the most common questions that I kind of get asked on Instagram and with our community in different areas. In essence, is what style of content to be creating, what style of content to be posting, and then most importantly, what ratio and what type of balance do you need to be looking at from a week-to-week perspective. So I've kind of put this together, which explains things on a really simple level. So I hope that you kind of understand it. But in essence, on the left-hand side here, we've basically got the ratio of content. We've then basically got the actual style and structure, and also some different methods that you can use with copywriting frameworks. And then we've basically got the kind of sub part, which is in essence what type of stuff we need to be posting within those categories there. Yeah. So in essence, right, if we start at the actual baseline structure of what we're trying to do with our social media content, it's going to start with building trust and authority, right? It's then going to have connection and emotion. It's then going to have engagement, interaction, and then eventually down the line, that is going to turn into more leads and sales, because these variables here have been done correctly. So when we're basically looking at what building trust and authority is all about, right? Trust and authority in essence is basically how can you actually showcase to people that you know what you are talking about. So when we're in essence looking at this initial kind of starting point, we have got pain, right? We've got problems, and then we've basically got value, right? That is in essence the bulk of content that we're looking at within the actual education element. And what I've basically put down on here is this needs to be looking at around 20%. Right. So one of the biggest mistakes that I see with people on social media is like 90% of their content is all just based on education. Right. And in reality, when we're looking at like top level content creators and stuff now, like the people who are doing the best are the people who are both inspiring, right, and having entertainment while also providing education at the same time. So this is a big point that I obviously kind of want to make. When I say this is not just about, right, well, that's a boring reel, that's an inspiring reel, that's an entertaining reel, and that's converting reel. You need to think about how you actually mask these different things into different variables. So for example, if I'm going to be looking at an inspirational focused piece, I can also educate within that, but I can also add in a little bit of entertainment as well. But as a rule of thumb, guys, what I'm looking for as like a baseline content structure is 20% of the content is all based on education, right? 35% of the content is all based on inspiration. 35% of the content, in essence, is where what I'd highly recommend is actually trying to make people laugh, trying to actually humanize yourself. So bringing in points of entertainment. And then you've got 10% of the content down at the bottom, in essence, is here where we've got that 10% where we're looking at converting, right? So the style of content and structure that we're going to be looking at with these type of things is going to be education around training, education around nutrition, mindset, and health, right? But what I want you to take into account is how many personal experiences have you had? How many inspiring stories have you got? How many inspiring stories have you got from clients where in essence you could use this to both create an educational topic at the same time, right? So when we're basically looking at this, the next point is going to be inspiration, right? Inspiration, in essence, guys, is your personal brand. It's your client stories. It's the company stories. It's how much you kind of know the niche, because inspiration is going to create more confidence, and that's going to create more action, right? So when we're basically looking at how we build out more connection and more emotion with our audience, it's being really straight up, right? It's being completely open and transparent and authentic with actually who you are as a person, right? This is so important, because if people feel like they don't actually know you as a person, then why would they actually want to enter a conversation with you? Why would they want to interact with your content? Why would they want to engage with you? The next thing from that point, when we're looking at inspiration, is rather than just throwing transformation pictures out, how can you actually tell a client's story and build the bigger picture out onto what type of thing that they've actually achieved? So how can you create inspiration by putting more effort in terms of how you are actually presenting this to your audience? From that point, we've then got the company story, right? This is a big one, and it's an area that I see a lot of fit pros kind of going wrong in. right? People are going to get attached onto your vision. They're going to get attached onto your mission. They're going to get attached onto your values, right? Go out of your way to make sure it's so clear that you've obviously got the main stuff, right? Where you've got offer clarity, which is definitely something that people still do wrong now. But you've got your offer, and then you've got your niche, right? And a lot of the time, this box is really being ticked, right? And it's great, right? But what you got to take into account is there are thousands upon thousands upon thousands of online coaches out there who have got similar offers, who have got similar niches, right? So what we've got to think about is, right, what type of stuff can someone actually attach onto, right? They're going to attach onto who you are as a person. So that's why your personal brand is so important. They're going to attach onto your client stories and the investment that you've got behind them. And that's why that's so important. They're then going to actually attach onto what your actually mission is and what your vision is and what you're wanting to achieve. Because at the end of the day, if you've got an online coach who's very similar to you, similar audience, similar niche, similar point, and it's really clear what your mission and what your vision is to that audience is going to choose you because you've obviously got more belief and purpose behind what you're doing. And then finally from that point is actually creating inspiration, where we're looking at niche stories. So this in essence is where we're looking at different kinds of frameworks associated with formatting their future pacing conditions, future pacing their cost of inaction, and looking at loads of different variables that's actually going to inspire people to take action based on the situations that you're putting them in and the pain that you're putting them in. Right, we're coming into the third one, right? Entertainment. Entertainment is so fucking important, right? This is so much more important now than it was 5 years ago. 5 years ago, you could 100% get away with running educational based content alone, direct response content alone, a bit of inspiration here and there, right? Whereas when we're looking at content creation in 2025, 2026 onwards, right? People are going to look at what they value the most, right? So what do people value? They value humor. So when you're basically looking at types of content for your niche, I want you to really think about, right, what type of stuff do these guys actually find funny? What type of content do these guys actually want to digest, which is valuable, so they'll actually watch it because they're being entertained, right? You don't need to suddenly come in and be an absolute joker. But what I want you to think about is actually talking about and presenting things that people don't expect, right? This is what entertainment is for me, is where you basically break the status quo, I like to call it. So how can you talk about funny stories that your audience don't know about you or they would never have expected? How can you talk about taboo topics? How can you break down poor practice? And how can you be looking at myth busting when using different formats in terms of entertainment and laugh and different areas where you can actually have fun with what you are telling people, right? Because that is what people want with content now, right? People are going to judge you based on the first 3 seconds to 15 seconds. So if you can actually show that this is just not another online coach selling at me with education, and instead actually bring in a little bit of humor and entertainment, all that's going to do is that's going to benefit you and your personal brand here, right? Just from thinking, how can I make my audience laugh associated with what their niche is? How can I look at taboo topics and funny stories associated with training, nutrition, mindset, health? How can I be looking at, in essence, poor practice, and then also presenting what the best practice is based on what I know? And then you're looking at obviously myth busting, where in essence you could be using myth busting based on what a client did before versus what they did with you, right? So this is what I mean by when I just draw, I'm just going to rub all this out. What you will find, guys, is this is actually how it works. I've tried to separate it so it's easy to understand and digest. But in reality, this is how it works. That feeds into that, that feeds into that, that feeds into that. They feed in, they feed across, right? And it's about how you can try and hit all of these different variables, right, in one go. That is so this here potentially is in essence one single reel if you put the time and effort into doing it, because you can educate while you are inspiring, while you are entertaining, alongside running a call to action as well. There's nothing stopping you doing that. So if you can basically create a high value piece of content that people genuinely appreciate and genuinely want to digest because they're being educated, they're being inspired, they're being entertained, and they're also having a call to action for a directory, then that's the point when you're onto a winner, right? Whereas a lot of the time what I kind of see people doing, and being completely honest with what I see on social media, is the biggest mistake I see is the fact that people don't have just 20% education. This is more like 80%, And then this is more like 20%. And then you dip in and out of the inspiration and the laughter because people, in essence, aren't comfortable actually presenting their personal brand. They are kind of uncomfortable in terms of actually looking at bringing entertainment and taboo topics and myth busting and pro practice through because they don't want to kind of cross the line, right? We can't run your content like that, guys. Like, you need to be focusing on what is going to make people laugh, what is going to inspire people, what's going to get people more bought into you, how can I create more actual connection with my audience, but most importantly, still maintain my credibility in terms of the actual things that I'm educating people on, guys, right? And then the final one at the bottom, right? So as I've kind of just said, you can definitely, in essence, run these type of kind of direct promos and offers. But if you are in a position where every time you post on social media, you're trying to sell to someone, your reach and your buying and your community engagement is going to go through the fucking floor, right? So what I actually like to do with this is imagine that this is, in essence, one reel. So out of 20% of it being educational, 35% of it being inspirational, 35% of it being entertaining, then you've got your final 10% of that reel or that carousel, for example, what is actually just focusing on the conversion factor, right? So that is basically, in essence, where we are making it real clear and presenting our actual offer to our audience. We are showing that we've got clear evidence and results. We are looking at actually the intake structures and scarcity and dates that people have to make a decision. And you've obviously got different areas, such as obviously kind of actually promoting a lead magnet off the back of it, guys. So that's the biggest lesson that I want to take away from this YouTube today is stop looking at a piece of content and thinking that needs to be just about a client result. That needs to be just about inspiration. That needs to be just about me, right? Think about how you can combine all of this into one. So just as a final run over, if I want to build more trust and authority with my audience, I need to make sure that the piece that I am creating is actually educational value. If I want to build more connection with my audience, which is obviously going to get more confidence for someone to take action, I need to be looking at inspiring people. And the best way that I can do that is going to be actually talking about my personal brand, my experiences, my clients, my company story, and actually the future pacing latent conditions of that actual niche. If I want to actually build more engagement and interaction, that is going to come from actual entertainment and laughter. So how can I actually present funny stories, taboo topics, poor practice and myth busting? And then finally, I'm not doing this for the sake of it. I need to make sure that at least 10% of this piece of content is going to be focused on actually promoting my offer, a client result, an intake promo, or a form of lead magnet, which is another form of action, which is going to lead to a follow-up down the line, guys. So again, I really hope that you've enjoyed this one. When you start thinking about content from this type of perspective and this type of like paradigm, for example, it becomes a 10 times more fun process. Whereas when you just go into content creation, you're thinking, right, how do I create value for my audience? It's boring as fuck for you, so it's going to be boring as fuck for them, right? Have fun with social media. Create what you want to create with obviously your offer and niche in mind. But it all starts with you actually being authentic, being open, being transparent by bringing old, new, future, everything to the table, guys. Like be a complete open book when it comes to this stuff. And I can promise you it will completely and utterly change the game for you. So as I've just said as the final kind of point, this is not about categorizing your content into different formats and different posts. Think about how you can actually combine all of these variables into one piece. And then all you do then is times that by 30 and then times that by 12, right? And that's where you've got your content strategy going, guys. So hope that you enjoyed this video. Obviously, we support fitness professionals with a substantial amount when it comes to social media. So live calls, SOPs, strategies, systems, management formats, one-to-one social media strategies, one-to-one touch point support, analytics, formatting, editing. We do absolutely everything, guys. So if you are looking for any type of support in this and a hell of a lot more, then please feel free to drop me a message on Instagram, or again, just hit the link somewhere around in my bio and you can book a call in straight away. See you on the next video.